Shalom, my brothers and sisters. Shalom. Welcome to another episode of Message from a Watchman by Symmanayah. This episode, this presentation is entitled Day of Shabbat. Day of Shabbat. And I like to open the presentation with three verses. Exodus 31:13. Exodus 31:13. And you speak to the children of Yashar'al, saying, My Shabbats you are to guard by all means, for it is a sign between me and you throughout your generations to know that I, Yahuwah, am setting you apart. Leviticus 19:30. Leviticus. Guard my Shabbats and reverence my set-apart place. I am Yahuwah. And Deuteronomy 5:12. Deuteronomy 5:12. Guard the Shabbat day to set it apart as Yahuwah, your Elohim, commanded you. Keep these verses in mind, my brothers and sisters, as we go through this presentation. Keep in mind that we are instructed to guard the Shabbat. What if the time we are to guard the Shabbat, we find ourselves walking away from our guard posts or letting the hedge down, the wall down? What if we're starting Shabbat at the wrong time? If our timing is off, then what we find ourselves is letting down our guards and not fully guarding the Shabbat. So keep in mind we have a responsibility, for it is a set-apart time for more reasons than many of us care to realize. But it's a time for rest. It's a time for meditation and prayer. It is a time to be set apart and focus. Take our focus off the distractions and focus on the Most High Father, Yahuwah, in the name of Yahushua. So as we get into this presentation, keep in mind we have been instructed to guard the Shabbat. And so before we go any further, I would like to read the disclaimer. As I read the disclaimer, this is important, and so you will find it in each video and each presentation. The views expressed in this presentation do not reflect the views of any technological portal I use. My views do not reflect the management and or staff of YouTube, Ustream, Facebook, Talk, or any other such communication portals. Like with any information presented, you are advised to research and seek confirmation. Each of us are held accountable for our own actions and decisions. Let the presentation begin. Welcome. Shalom. The presentation you are about to watch represents the reflections of a watchman who seeks to worship and obey the Most High Yahuwah in spirit and in deeds, according to written and living scriptures, in the name of Yahushua the Messiah. It is recommended for those who study the scriptures with pure intentions for worshiping and obeying the Most High. Each of us must give an account to our actions, and therefore the decisions we make either comes with consequence or benefit. It is Yahushua that is our judge, and it would be wise to make sure our actions line up with his written and living word. Let us begin. Let's set the tone for this presentation. Let's examine some things. Sometimes by asking questions and looking at scriptures, we can find answers. Who is Aleph Tah, beginning and end? Let us look at Revelations 1:8. Here we see the Father says, I am the Aleph and the Tah, beginning and the end, says Yahuwah, who is and who was and who is to come, the Almighty. Remember, the beginning and the end. What was first, man or man's seed? Let's consider Genesis 1:26. And Elohim said, let us make man in our image, according to our likeness, and let them rule over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over the livestock, and over the earth, and over all the creeping creatures that creep on earth. And Elohim created the man in his image. In the image of Elohim he created him. Male and female he created them. So you see, it began with Yahuwah. He is the beginning of all, in all. And he created man, and he created female. Keep that point in mind as we move forward. Let us continue with more questions. Do you think consistency is good? Consider this. Ecclesiastes 1:9. Ecclesiastes 1:9. What has been is what shall be, and what has been done is what shall be done, and there is no new matter under the sun. If there's no new matter, will it be safe? Could it be safe to say consistency is a thing of the Father? Are you prepared to break away from ill habits? What if you discovered some of the habits that you have are erroneous? Do you have the strength? Are you prepared to break away? Consider Isaiah 52:11. Turn aside, come out from there. Touch not the unclean. Come out of her midst, be clean, you who bear the vessels of Yahuwah. As believers, we are the vessels of Yahuwah. And there are times we are instructed to come away, to come out of her, to turn aside, to turn away from erroneous teachings, unrighteous guidance, ill-conceived counsel. For whatever reason, precision is the personality of Yahuwah, precise. Keep these verses in mind. Keep the thought in mind that there are times when we must step away. Some more questions and more scriptures as we move along. Can we see the consistency of Yahuwah? Let's step back. Let's look at some more verses. Numbers 21:8. And Yahuwah said to Moshe, make a fiery serpent and set it on a pole. And it shall be that everyone who is bitten, when he looks at it, shall live. So Moshe made a bronze serpent and put it on a pole. And it came to be, if the serpent had bitten anyone, when he looked at it, the bronze serpent, he lived. So here we see Yahuwah giving instructions about lifting up this bronze serpent. And those who would touch, those when they looked at the serpent, they lived. Not touch. When they looked at the bronze serpent, they lived. As instructed by Yahuwah. Instructions he gave Moshe. Now, let us consider John 3:14. And as Moshe lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, even so the son of Adam has to be lifted up. So we see another similarity where there's a lifting up and life prevails. John 12:32. And I, if I am lifted up from the earth, shall draw all men unto myself. This is Yahushua speaking. Yahushua letting us know that if he's lifted up, he will draw all men to himself. He will bring life and restoration to the lost. John 3:15. So that whoever is believing in him should not perish, but possess everlasting life. Do we see the consistency? Do we see the consistency in life, a lifting up? Do we see the consistency in days of old to Messiah's time? A consistency? Let's examine some more. More questions in scriptures. Have we prepared for the great transition? Isaiah 11:12 says, "And he shall raise a banner for the nations, and gather the outcasts of Israel, and assemble the dispersed of Yehudah from the four corners of the earth." So do we think this is just going to materialize at a split second? Have we given thought to realize that maybe, just maybe, the Father may be preparing us, those who will represent Yashar'al returning, both Hebrew and Goyim, other nations, or Gentiles as people say, who seek to do the will of the Father? I submit to you, brothers and sisters, that I am compelled to believe that the Father will prepare those who will be returning. He will prepare our minds and spirits and body. And with that preparation will come some guidance. There are things we must adhere to. Precise obedience. Things to consider. Another question. Do you think order and structure is necessary? Do you think order and structure is necessary? Are necessary? Let's read Ephesians 4:15. "But maintaining the truth in love, we grow up in all respects into him who is the head, Messiah." Ephesians 4:16. "For whom the entire body is joined and knit together by what every joint supplies, according to the working by which each part does its share, causes growth of the body for the building up of itself in love." So you see, my brothers and sisters, each of us are members of this body, and we each have tasks and roles and responsibilities that we will be held accountable for. Let us not get mad or be envy at who the Spirit of Yahushua guides to do what task. Let us not be upset. Let us not fight, argue, debate one another over those whom Yahushua has chosen. For the Spirit of Yahushua will bear witness of his actions according to Scriptures. Something to think about. So I submit to you, brothers and sisters, there will be actions that will bring order and structure that is necessary to prepare us for that transition. Those who will be leaving, and prepare those to establish the fortitude that will be staying for whatever reason, according to the guidance of the Spirit of Yahushua. Keep that in mind. And as we look at some more questions, what light do you think is greatest? Consider this. John 11:9. Yahushua answered, "Are there not 12 hours in the day? If anyone walks in the day, he does not stumble, because he sees the light of this world. But if anyone walks in the night, he stumbles, because the light is not in him. And night shall be Revelations 22:5. And night shall be no more, and they shall have no need of a lamp or the light of the sun, because Yahuwah Elohim shall give them light, and they shall reign forever and ever." And basically what I'm saying here is that there's emphasis on the value of daylight. Yes, John was talking about daylight. And there's emphasis on just light altogether. But we see here by the Father being light, Elohim should give him light. The very first light begins with Elohim. But for some reason, many people miss this. And they think that the day started with evening, which was night, and then we had morning before we calculated a day. But no, it began with Yahuwah. He created a greater light and a lesser light. And we'll continue more on this issue of light. Stay tuned for part 2. This concludes part 1 on Day of Shabbat. Stay tuned for part 2.